After living in both Australia and the Netherlands, we get asked this question all the time. Which country is actually cheaper to live in? In this video, we will compare everything from rent, to groceries, to transport, and healthcare, based on our own experiences from living in both of the countries. And we think some of the results might surprise you.
Well,
We have a serious problem.
And the problem is that both countries are very expensive to live in. But after living in both countries, we found the answer isn't quite as simple as most people think. So let's break it down. And we'll start with housing, which is probably the biggest expense for most people. So, as you probably know, there's a huge housing crisis going on in the Netherlands at the moment. So we were very lucky to find a place when we did. We live in Tilburg, which is a city in the south of the Netherlands. It isn't a particularly high cost of living city compared to, let's say, Amsterdam or Utrecht or Rotterdam. But here we're paying €1,300 per month, and that's going up to $1,400 soon. That's including all bills like electricity and internet and water, so that's good, I guess. Between the two of us, it's not cheap, but it is manageable. I should mention it's a one-bedroom apartment, approximately 50 or 55 square meters, I believe. In Amsterdam, for example, something like that could run you easily over €2,000 per month. So it is very expensive in Amsterdam and the bigger cities. And now moving on to housing costs in Australia. The cost of housing in Australia varies massively depending on specifically where you live, even more so than in the Netherlands, I would say. So we're from Brisbane, which is in Queensland on the east coast of Australia. It's a big city, it's the third most populous city in Australia, and there we were paying approximately $300 per week for a room in a share house with about 2 or 3 other people. In euros, that's about €730 per month. Fun fact for the Dutchies listening, we put everything in weekly in Australia, so rent is paid weekly and you usually get paid fortnightly or weekly as well. For an equivalent one-bedroom apartment to what we have in the Netherlands, you're probably looking at about $500 to $650 Australian dollars per week. So that's about €1,200 to €1,400 per month. The thing about Australia is about 85% of the population lives along the coast, and the middle is pretty much uninhabited. So you can definitely pay a lot less for rent if you live in the rural areas. And now to the verdict. For housing costs in Australia versus the Netherlands, it's very close, but I'm going to have to say from our own personal experiences that it's cheaper in Australia. That's just down to the fact that the majority of people who live in the Netherlands live in Amsterdam and the bigger cities, and there you can easily pay over €2,000 for a one-bedroom apartment. And now to expense number 2, groceries and eating out. Groceries and eating out just seems to be getting more and more expensive, especially in the last few years. So first, let's start with the Netherlands. In the Netherlands, where you shop makes a huge difference. If you do all your shopping at Albert Heijn, then things get expensive very quickly. Jumbo is usually a little better, but we find the real savings are at Aldi and Netarama. Again, this is only from our experiences, but you can easily walk into Albert Heijn and spend 50 to €70 and have that food only last you for a few days. It also depends what you buy. If you buy the more traditional sort of Dutch staples and basics like bread and cheese and dairy products, they're a little bit cheaper than Australia, I would say. Or if you just eat only worstenbroodjes, which is my new favorite Dutch delicacy, then that's also quite affordable. But meat prices over here in the Netherlands, don't get me started on the price of meat. It's, I would say, twice as expensive as it is back home to get like a good steak. I guess we eat a lot of meat in Australia. For eating out, the Netherlands definitely feels more expensive. I don't know if it's the labour costs in the Netherlands or the rising prices of breadcrumbs, but it does hurt paying like €18 for some deep fried mystery meat on bread. Croquettes are delicious though. For example, a basic meal at a standard pub or restaurant in Australia would cost you about $20 to $30, but in the Netherlands you'll be paying around 15 to €25. So with the exchange rate being €1 is equal to $1.70 in Australian, it does feel a bit more expensive. However, this isn't an accurate comparison because it's important not to directly compare the two because they are different economies. So if you're earning in euros, it's different than spending in Australian dollars. And now to the verdict. Which is cheaper, Australia or the Netherlands for groceries and eating out? For groceries, it's basically on par. They're both very expensive, both equally expensive. But from our experience, eating out feels cheaper in Australia. So I'm going to have to give it to Australia again. Australia is cheaper. And now, let's talk about the costs of transport. Starting with the Netherlands, the public transport here is exceptional. You can get anywhere you want, it's clean, and it's on time, usually. The only downside is that the trains here are quite expensive. A one-way ticket from Utrecht to Amsterdam, which is only about a 20-minute journey, will cost €10. You can get what's called an OV chipkaart, and there's several subscriptions you can get on there that make it cheaper to ride on off-peak times and on weekends. But one of the best things about the Netherlands is it's so easy to just cycle everywhere. Als je fiets is het niet erg duur. We don't even own a car here in the Netherlands, but in Australia, in most places, that's not really possible. With everything being so far apart in Australia and the public transport not being super reliable, unfortunately you are reliant on your car. A standard train ticket for, let's say, a 10-minute journey would cost you about $4 to $5 Australian dollars. So it is a little bit cheaper in Australia. So which is cheaper? I'm going to have to give it to Australia. But you do really get what you pay for. The transport infrastructure in the Netherlands is a lot better than Australia. And finally, number 4, healthcare. In the Netherlands, health insurance is compulsory for everyone. It's called de verplicht zorgverzekering. And unfortunately, it is expensive. It'll cost approximately €150 per month, depending on your level of cover. But from my experience in the Netherlands, the standard of care that you get is very high. So I personally think it's worth it. Australia takes a very different approach. We have what's called Medicare, which provides access to public healthcare, and treatment in public hospitals is generally free. And the downside to that is, whilst the standard of care in Australia is quite good, you can also be waiting quite a long time for an elective surgery, which is why a lot of Australians choose to get a private health insurance plan. I swear I'm not trying to be biased. I even own a pair of clogs, but I think you guys know what I'm going to say already. And that's that from our own personal experience, all in all, it does feel like maybe Australia is a little bit cheaper. But that's only part of the story. And the reality is that both Australia and the Netherlands are fantastic countries to live in. And we're incredibly lucky to have experienced life in both.